Hello and welcome again to this edition of Capital Dateline. I'm your host, Brad Swanson. We're coming to you just a few blocks from Florida's capital, from the headquarters of the Florida Cable Telecommunications Association. I today am joined by the digital media leaders of Florida. In our studio today, we have Matt Dixon, who is the Florida Bureau Chief for Politico Florida. We're also joined by Brian Burgess, who is the publisher of The Capitalist, aka Peter Schorsch Jr. We have Peter Schorsch, publisher of FloridaPolitics.com, and Tramel Gomes, president of Gomes Media, host of The Rotunda, and definitely the best dressed guy in the room today. Gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to the show. All right, so we've got a few weeks left in this year's legislative session. We've had tons of just crazy issues, stuff Florida's never seen, from marijuana implementation to well, we've seen gambling before and gaming law. But how would you guys describe the state of affairs in the Capitol, everywhere from the governor's office to the speaker to the president? What are we seeing out there? Dealer's choice. Who wants to go first?
Well, it's the time of the year, I would say, when the House and the Senate can't agree if the sky is blue. And, you know, some of it's by design, and it's a lot of fun to watch. They're fighting over some of the biggest issues of the day. They're fighting over all the things you talked about. They can't agree on medical marijuana. We're going into a gaming conference, final gaming negotiations, and they're miles apart. So right now, the dynamic, and the governor will get in later, the last week or so, and when veto season comes. But right now, it's largely a big fight between the House and the Senate, and that's traditional. It's a good spectator sport, you know.
Right. So you're characterizing this as traditional.
I would say, I think early in session, when there was a lot of budget questions going on, it felt a little different. It felt like for sure we were going to go into a special session and face this train wreck. But I think some of the tension we see at the end of session here feels much more traditional. A lot of big issues yet, so it's certainly a lot of fights out there, but it feels like more like a traditional session as opposed to some of the doom and gloom we were hearing about earlier.
Right. Okay, all right. Burgess?
I would say that, yeah, there is the doom and gloom, and that in all the 6 years that I've seen this stuff play out, I would agree with you. It's the same thing. There's always the fretting and the hand-wringing from lobbyists who aren't getting their way, and there's a lot of them this year that aren't getting their way. But there is one sort of elephant in the room, and that is, what is Richard Corcoran really going to do, and what is he up to? And does he really need to bring session in for a landing, or does he benefit politically by creating a train wreck?
Sure.
Well, what do you think as media professionals?
Well, I mean,
benefits from
a political. Yeah, I'll carry that ball a little further down the field. I think that there are some who would argue that Richard Corcoran has everything to gain by stretching this thing out a little bit longer and carrying it out. He can raise money during the downtime between the end of session if there's a sine die on time, and then we have that break period before maybe the tail end of June when we come back. He can raise money, and he can raise money on issues that he may have scuttled. So not a bad political move for him. He gets to play the role of spoiler. He gets to play the role of the fixer, the guy who's, I'm going to hold the line on some of these conservative issues, and he gets all the headlines.
Well, and with his base, the swath of voters that he would aim at in either a Senate race or a gubernatorial race, this stuff speaks perfectly to them. So to your point, I mean, I think most would argue that Richard Corcoran has a political benefit of extending this thing in perhaps a special session. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. But I agree with the point that it would be politically beneficial to the speaker.
Tramel, what say you?
Same thing. Once you're outside of this bubble, what else is going on? So they need to stay here. Everyone would like to be in Corcoran's head to see what's going on. It's a benefit to him to extend, because otherwise, once you leave the session, you're back to your district and there's nothing going on. How do you grab those headlines? So staying here, throwing some stuff in the air and seeing where they fall and grabbing as much media attention, having us write about it and cover it, is the way to get headlines to benefit his future.
So we all heard it here first. Tramel Gomes wants to get into the head of Richard Corcoran. It's weird.
I would like to sit down and
he could make quite a fortune on it, because there's a lot of people who want to be in Richard Corcoran's head right now, understand what he's doing.
The most famous podcast in the country, if you can figure out how to do that.
Right. Peter, what say you?
I'm good. I think it's unsurprising. I think they're playing to form. I think when Richard Corcoran won this speaker designate, we knew this was coming. We knew that Joe Negron was going to be a relatively milquetoast, trial lawyer loving Senate president who has relatively weaker lieutenants than other leaders. And so this is playing to form. Now, that doesn't mean that we know how the script is going to end, but Jack Latvala is the bear, the governor is uninterested, Richard Corcoran's Machiavellian, and Joe Negron is milquetoast. And so you could have written this in January of 2014, and it's played to form.
I wouldn't say necessarily weaker lieutenants, but lieutenants who don't agree with their president as much as, say, the lieutenants agree with their speaker. It's to your point about being trial lawyer loving. Some of his top lieutenants are more traditional, business-friendly Republicans, and I think there's some inherent policy tensions between the two of them. So I think as individually, a Bill Gavano and a Jack Latvala, Wilton Simpson are all strong members. It's just they don't necessarily have their president's back the way we've historically seen that work.
I was referring to, I mean, his two chief lieutenants would be Anna Terra Flores and Lizbeth Benaquisto.
And you would characterize them as weak?
I would say that they are weaker than previous lieutenants. You know, I think you need a hammer in there. I don't like Tom Lee's politics, but when he was appropriations chair and when he was part of it, he was a hammer. And I think that there is a Joe Negron is not being served very well right now. Anna Terra Flores has been probably one of the bigger disappointments of session, has been criticized across the board from Sunshine State News to the Miami Herald, from our sites. She has not had a very strong session. And so I think then you're right, the hosts unto themselves, Simpson, Galvano, they've carved out their own future Senate presidency. And you're right, they're not in line with Negron. And then you've got the big bear out there, Latvala, growling at Tiger Bay, saying we're not going to get done until June 30th.
Right. Well, I'd say it's difficult to be weak, but also be a state lawmaker and get noticed by the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal has written editorials critical of Anna Terra Flores, and the idea that, you know, while I'm sure some folks made phone calls up there, the idea that you got a paper like that to bite on a state lawmaker, I don't know that I'm fully there that it was completely weak or completely unnoticed, because I think, you know, the Senate and some of its policy fights are getting noticed at a larger level than, you know, sometimes historically they are.
Yeah, but I would say the Senate looks like, to form, to your point, is typically a bunch of independent leaders versus the House, which is operating in a machine-like manner, meaning top-down, you know, relatively, you know, moving forward based upon who the leadership is. Okay, so let's move on to what they're working on. What do you guys think will be the bills that survive, the big appropriations that survive, and make it to Governor Scott's desk, and ultimately, what do you think he actually signs?
I think you'll see a trade-off for the education funding. I think the House gets its charters. They want funding for what they call Schools of Hope, $200 million for charter schools. I think that gets traded for Joe Negron's top priority, which is additional money for higher education. I think that's one of the places where we'll see agreement. As Alexandra Glorioso reported today, she's with the Naples Daily News, there's a preliminary offer on gambling that the Senate may be moving a little bit towards the House's angle right there. That may be something. I think one of the interesting maneuvers this week is by the marijuana people, John Morgan, Ben Polera. They are now calling for the implementing bill to be opposed. And so we may get out of here without a marijuana bill, which would be really counter to what the voters had asked. You know, I think it was 71% wanting that.
Well, it's very interesting, John Morgan and Ben Polera. John Morgan, obviously, of the trial lawyer world, the idea that he wouldn't want a bill to pass that he opposes so he could take it to court.
Right.
I mean, who'd have thunk it, right? Who'd have thunk it?
Job security, right there,
exactly.
right?
Who'd have thunk it, right?
Tremel?
Well, a bill that we're not talking about, or a bevy of bills, is guns. The gun lobby, and to Peter's point earlier, like, you know, looking at Anna Terra Flores, the one who's feeling the heat for all of those gun bills not making it through, that is something to like, you know, commend, to be able to go up against.
A lot of gun owners in Florida, for sure.
It's to be seen what the blowback will be to Anna Terra Flores after this, her future, what's next for her, because we've seen in past, like, you know, people do not fare well when they go up against the lobby.
The myth of the NRA, you know, finally, you know, being popped at this point, that they are all powerful. I mean, they've switched committee chairs. That they thought that was the big issue. That if they had a new committee chair, they would get in these bills, and they're running into the same problems.
The formation of that committee, though, still isn't very, you know, it was sort of the switcheroo. You give them a chairman, so it looks like those bills are going to pass, but the makeup of some of the South Florida Republicans on that committee, Judiciary Committee, still isn't.
You can't have open carry down in South Beach. That just wouldn't work.
It's hard.
I've seen that.
It's hard to strap it to a
doesn't
bikini.
work. Right.
It's not hard, it just looks funny.
Right. Have any of you tried that? That's a little weird. Okay, so let's move on. All right, so we're looking at bills. Any other bills we need to be bird dogging? I mean, Uber had just passed this week. That's a huge bill to get across, you know, both chambers and on its way to the governor. I'm sure Caesar at Uber is celebrating, you know, to high heaven right now.
Yeah, we haven't seen Caesar
Trammell.
much. Yeah,
I heard they were out at Top Flight Golf many hours
That's
after.
off the record.
Okay, all right.
Is Top Flight
a big
R-rated?
Back on the record.
But that's a big
Right.
win for the ride-sharing community. I think it's been talked about that it's like, one of the best legislation in favor of them across the country.
Well, and you
here
remember
in
Senator
Florida.
Brandis was the first one to just opine on the fact that you would get off in what is arguably the third largest state in the nation, and your app would be dead, and a global app that people would. And that was 2-3 years ago.
A new Senate president makes all the difference.
Yeah.
And I think last year President Gardner was certainly not in favor of it. He bottled that thing up, and here we are.
I'll say this: I was talking to a business leader the other day, and
Peter, he was talking to Peter.
It was not Peter, but the sentiment was, I can't believe that the ride-sharing legislation is the biggest win for businesses that we have to talk about right now.
Right.
This
Workers'
person
comp.
was beside him or herself, and I'm paraphrasing, but there was like this sort of
Paraphrasing the business leader.
incredulously just opining about how this is the only thing they've really gotten done that's innovative, that's forward-looking for businesses at this point. So there's a little bit of disappointment, I think, in the business community.
I spoke with a business leader as well.
Yes.
And you're right. A couple of the issues that we aren't talking about that are in play are some of the big insurance issues. They're talking about repealing PIP, which would be one of those issues that hits every Floridian in the pocketbook. I think it's like a $400 million swing. Workers' comp, I think, is still in play. The House has passed its bill. The Senate's like, we don't want to do that. But the insurance lobbyists are going to be busy the next 2 weeks, either killing or pushing some legislation.
Well, it's just different this year with those guys. The insurance lobbyists and the business lobby are good at defense. They're strong in the Capitol, but for the first time in a while, they're not on offense and have the trial lawyers on defense. It's reversed this year. So they might kill some of the most toxic stuff, and I'm skeptical that some of the bills we just talked about can actually pass. But their muscles are still being flexed. It's just in a different regard this session.
Well, that's a little bit to the next question. So life support. I mean, those two, ironically enough, at this point, shouldn't be on life support. They should be in finalization phase. If you compare it to past years, what else is on life support that may have died off, might be coming back? I mean, what do you see in there?
Well, one of the things that I find interesting, the governor came out this week and asked for $100 million for Visit Florida, which is $24 million more than they currently have. And what I thought was interesting is the governor has been the biggest advocate for Enterprise Florida, and those two have been kind of lumped together. Towards the end of session, he seems to kind of be focusing more on Visit Florida and focusing requests there. I wonder if that's bad news for Mike Grissom and Enterprise Florida, in the sense that the governor the governor has changed his focus a little bit. And from a life support perspective, there's the idea the House is trying to kill Enterprise Florida, abolish it. The governor is trying to get incentive money for it. And I wonder to what degree some legislation in the House dealing with Enterprise Florida and the entity in general is going to be part of this horse trade and could be on life support, as the governor says, well, give me more money for my tourism marketing, and we can talk about this other thing that I've been a huge advocate for. So I'm interested to see how that whole economic development thing plays out now that the governor has focused, it seems, more on Visit Florida than Enterprise Florida.
Yeah, it's an issue. Go ahead.
He keeps saying Governor Scott, and I think it's U.S. Senator Scott. I mean, he's been in D.C. more this week than anywhere else. And to our credit, I mean, he brought back, the biggest win of the session is the $1.5 billion for the low-income pool money. I mean, that kind of changed the dynamic of session because it took off some of the pressure. And then he brings home, I think yesterday, a commitment for federal funding for fixing the dike down in South Florida. So I think Senator Scott is doing a great job. If I was Senator Nelson, I would be very worried right now.
I think the breaking news here is Peter just buried Bill Nelson here, the only statewide Democrat, and Peter just killed him off.
I think Bill Nelson buried Bill Nelson a long time ago.
Just keeps winning, though.
No, but you're right with the Visit Florida. I've never seen those negotiations by the governor where it's like, hey, I want $74 million. They come back with 25. He's like, no, I want 100. He's like, wait, we need to meet in the middle, not you just keep increasing.
Well, but he has always generally tethered the two issues. It's always been Visit Florida,
Yeah.
Enterprise Florida. And
Do you think he's given up?
Well, I don't think he's given up. Giving up's too strong, but he called an impromptu press conference, which first off, that's not like this governor. He doesn't generally do it. And he didn't once mention Enterprise Florida. He had the Visit Florida, he had Ken Lawson there, he had the chair of the Visit Florida board, and there wasn't a sniff of Enterprise Florida. So I think giving up is way too strong of a term at this point, but I thought it was definitely an interesting switch that was noticeable.
Brian?
Look, Enterprise Florida is on life support, and it's going to stay on life support through the time Corcoran is Speaker of the House. There's no question about it. It's not going to go away, though. I am confident that they may strip funding from it, but it's not going to be eradicated or abolished. It's going to exist. I don't know how much money they're going to get, if any. Probably zeroed out this year, but it will, and that's why it's on life support. It'll be on life support this year, next year, and then it'll come back. It is a popular program amongst business communities, amongst some of these folks from various districts, and it is popular with the governor. Whether it's popular with the next governor, that's a different story. But so that's why it'll be on life support for the next 2 years.
So where does that leave our good friend Mike Grissom, who's been the subject of many an article by all of you?
He's going to be the next deputy editor at the Capitalist.
I think he'll remain as interim CEO. He knows how to navigate this environment. I think he'll remain there. There's no reason to install someone new when there's no money to spend right now. Grissom will take care of the
But there's two different questions. We always talk about the economic incentives, which is above what their operational, what their base funding is. If the House and House leadership and Speaker Corcoran won't even sign off on the $23 million in operational funding that they have, what does that look like when they don't just have no incentives but don't have a budget?
Well, I think they survive with just enough to operate. I think they'll stay alive. They'll find a way to be as relevant as possible with a very thin budget.
If you're asking questions about Mike Grissom, I think one of the questions you really have to wonder about is what state agency will he land at next? Because undoubtedly they'll be zeroed out not soon thereafter. And so I'd keep an eye out on
Mike Grissom.
I love Mike Grissom. I mean, I see him every night at the Governor's Club.
Get him the Grim Reaper, cast him and send him off to DBPR or something?
I love Leslie Doer's campaign for state party chair.
Trammell?
It's a good strategy by the governor to what Matt was talking about, that pivot. It's not completely dead to not focus on Enterprise Florida, but to just switch and put all the attention over on Visit Florida. It's something that he has a lot of support coming out of. He has, Florida is a tourism state, so there's a lot of people who are coming in.
It was definitely the first component in economic development world where you saw multiple sides kind of soften and come together on a conversation. It was, it was the package that was there. But as you see it, that could be considered a winner currently in the process. But let's talk about other winners and losers that you all see right now in session, or who do you think ends up a winner and loser in the next few weeks?
I'm curious to see what will happen with Senator Scott, Governor Scott, bringing that win from Washington to help with the Herbert Hoover Dike. How will that impact President Negron's plan for his push to fix Lake Okeechobee?
Peter?
I think a loser is Tom Lee. I think that he made a maneuver to be the House's guy in the Senate, as Matt has written about in a great article behind the paywall this week. But he has alienated many of his colleagues. I thought it was atrocious that he was the first person to go over and shake Frank Artilli's hand after that terrible apology. But he's also lost a lot of bills. I mean, the scene this week where Jack Latvala and Danny Young are fighting with him over an investigation into the airport and yada yada. But that seems to be happening to a lot of Tom Lee bills right now. Is they keep losing. I mean, he's got probably the only person that's losing more bills right now is Frank Artilli's.
Thanks for bringing up Frank Artilli's. I think one of the biggest losers right now are Florida Democrats, and that is because they have made more noise about this issue than anything else in the Florida session this entire session. They are wrapped up in it. It's pure identity politics, and if they could all band together on a couple of other issues, they could actually be effective in a lot of different ways. But right now, they have made this their main thing. Absolutely, Artilli's is probably doomed and possibly should be doomed. We'll know more next week. He certainly shouldn't have said what he said. But I'm hearing rumors now that Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson are coming down. Identity politics is not a... Oh, you started the rumor? Okay, fair enough.
I did start that rumor last night.
Okay, well, it got to me very quickly. So it's too few degrees of separation.
I think by design, you started that rumor to get to Burgess for today.
Right.
Sabotage, at any rate, regardless, whether they show up or whether they don't, whether that becomes continues to be a focus through next week. We're talking about an $80 billion budget right now, and the Artilli's issue is what everybody's talking about.
Right, but I also think they can see that, and maybe rightly so, as leverage for the $82 or $83 billion budget you're talking about. The idea that they stick together as a bloc and as a caucus and keep that drumbeat going and going and going. I'm not convinced that they can't translate that into real policy or funding wins. So I don't know that it's necessarily a bad idea. I think they have to, but I think they can at least I think where Peter's going to go is in the past when they've tried to do this, they've screwed it up. But it's at least I think an okay strategy, and it could work.
Making fun of the Florida Democrats for being losers is like criticizing the Washington Generals for
They had-
poor free throw shooting. I mean,
They can
this
be
is
more
that's
effective,
going to
though.
happen.
There's more they can do, and they're not doing it.
I'm going to pop you now, and I'm going to get on my blog 5 minutes later. I mean, to dismiss the Artilles situation as just identity politics, I think there are sometimes sins so egregious that even an $82 billion budget can be put on hold for a day or two to address a serious topic.
Only $30 billion of state money.
And I think we need to deal with the Artilles issue. I think the problem with the Artilles issue, if you want to go to your part of it, is it has thrown everything for a delay of 3 or 4 days right now. But no, this is serious enough where we need to, the Democrats, I think if Perry Thurston and Oscar do nothing else but get rid of a horrible person from the Florida Senate, they will have accomplished something this
And
session.
he's not a popular figure at all. I mean,
No.
he's viewed as sort of a bit of a bully, and I don't know that he's going to survive this thing. There's the hearing next week, or the report coming out next week, and that will largely sort of control his fate, in my view.
This is
What are you hearing on it?
beyond politics, the incident with Artilles. And it's not the first time we've had. Every time I've covered Artilles, it's been more about a controversial issue, like, from the bar fights to everything else in between. And his reputation is just known for just being this type of character that we heard about, reported on in the Miami Herald. So it's outside of just identity politics, like, this, you shouldn't be calling anyone these names, these words. These are the leaders of our state. So it's beyond that. And listening to Leader Brannon, he would say, and he said that how they didn't design this, they didn't put words in his mouth to take this on as their cause. He did this to himself. So it's just common decency and decorum to their argument.
Well, so that issue will continue to play out as we'll see between now and the end of session and probably beyond. So let's move back to a discussion on issues and leadership. If you were Speaker Corcoran and you have now until the end of session, what do you care most about getting done between now and then?
Making sure that there's not one penny of economic incentives in the final budget. He's sort of painted himself into a corner politically. The AFPs and sort of the very conservative outside groups of the world are largely expected to support him politically moving forward. And to this point, he's painted himself into a corner by saying, digging his heels in no incentives. We want to abolish Enterprise Florida. So if he keeps all of those out, if he follows through with that, I think that would be a big win for him, and that would be my focus. I mean, if there's $10,000 for some random film incentive in the final budget, it's a rounding error as far as the total budget, but it's going to become an issue for him.
It's philosophical at that point.
I think you have got to not snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. This has been the Richard Corcoran session. It has been the Richard Corcoran show. He is the big winner. He has set the table. I said this to him the other day. I've written it. Get out of here. Get out on time. Get a budget. You've won. You have changed the game. But I see all these things like he launches an investigation into this, he wants an audit into that, and that's the criticism of the speaker, is that he loves the game so much that he doesn't know how to win it. Get out of here. I mean, get out on Cinco de Mayo, have a margarita, and be done. If you got to come back and do the budget, that's fine, but take a break.
Well, we're calling him the winner, but there's a real chance, and a chance that the Senate president gets his number one priority. The reservoir bill has been rewritten, and we keep focusing on Corcoran, and Speaker Corcoran is the big winner. But if that bill passes, I think President Negron quietly has did the only thing he wanted to do here.
Held the line on a lot of conservative issues, and then passed this thing, which is very important to his constituents where he lives.
Right. So he could be winning on his number one bill, while Speaker Corcoran has all bills that he has to stop or
He's got to hold the
maintain to
line.
get out.
Corcoran has to hold the line, and I think that by contrast, I agree with what you said, Peter. And if you look back to the 2011 session, Mike Herodopoulos was running for Senate at the same time that he was at the same time he was running his first term as the Senate president, and having that knowledge, the other members knowing that he's got a political agenda beyond session, can be used as leverage. So Richard Corcoran is in a dangerous spot, but he also is in the driver's seat. And as long as he can hold the line, I think he'll emerge as a big winner. But he's going to have to do that.
All right, so let's look at the last days of session. What should we brace for? What's unexpected? What do you guys see that could just absolutely, change both our world and perhaps Florida's between now and the end of session?
Regardless, for Corcoran, I think the plume that he has left with all the changes that he has done, it would be seen as a win for him if he does not get everything he wants, because he has just torn everything up. We're all focused on him. His impressions has changed. People who are not typically that would be supportive of him are saying oh, look at it, Corcoran, look at this guy, and he's on their radar. So this is boding well for him and whatever else he does.
Yeah, okay.
I think the gambling bill will be interesting, at least for another week. I think they will conference and they'll either make progress and then be able to get something done, or will blow up again the Peanuts character. But, and I'd be remiss if we didn't mention it, Latvala magic. I mean, it's got to come. I mean, Jack he's been growling, but we have not seen Latvala magic yet. And it is coming into his end of the pool right now, the budget, the parliamentary procedures, et cetera. I think he's going to say, I think he's going to look at Joe Negron and hold my beer and come out there and make his presence felt in the last 2 weeks.
He hasn't won a race in a very long time, but this is his time. He's magic in the building. Sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, special session, do we go or don't we?
I don't think so. I've been saying it from people were predicting special session before regular session started, and I always said that was premature. I've said it in public settings before. It wouldn't shock me, I guess, but if you were asking me, gun to my head, I'm going to say we get out on time.
There are Senate staffers who are floating rumors, but I do believe about forcing a special session. But I do believe that is more of a Jack Latvala sort of trying to create a little extra pressure.
You think it lands?
I did not think. I thought we were not going to. Now I do. Over the Artilles thing throws off the timing for the next 2 or 3 days. They need 7 days to conference. From committee chairs, appropriations chairs, leaders. That puts you to Monday or Tuesday. I don't know. Maybe they get out at Saturday at 4 in the morning. But I think will be a cooling off period, and bills are dying and all that stuff, and they come back a couple weeks later and do the budget.
Tramel, last word.
I think I'll leave it open. We don't know. And that's what's happening around the Capitol. People are wondering, what's next? And to my earlier point, people want to be in the head of Richard Corcoran to see what's really going to happen, who's going to kick things up. So we'll see.
All right, the Corcoran Cabeza. That is the topic of the day. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on Capital Dateline, and we look forward to seeing y'all again soon.